The anime begins with a focus on cherry blossom trees, where our protagonist, Suzu Kanade, looks like someone who lives in her room 24/7 and is a disgrace to her family. She enters a ranch to buy freshly made milk crepes since she does not have big enough likes on herself. The owner of the ranch shows her a special man-made milk crepe, and she becomes all excited to buy it. But she wants to buy the OG version as well, so the owner decides to give her a special discount, and she becomes all joyous. While the girl buys the crepes, a strange creature watches them from the bushes and calls himself an Ayakashi. Ayakashis are creatures who are blind to the human eye, and most have a bloodlust for humans. To counter these creatures, there's a group of people called exorcist ninjas, and we see a redhead ninja who runs and jumps on a tree near a park. Suzu enjoys the crepe as much as a kid from Africa would love to see food for the first time. As she enjoys her lonely time, Ayakashi watches her from the tree, and he begins to drool as he sees her as a delicious meat pack of a miner. But when the Ayakashi tries to swoop on her, the exorcist ninja who goes by the name of Kazumaki Matsuri grabs the Ayakashi, and he becomes all airheaded to see someone from the legendary Kazumaki clan, who fails to recognize the Ayakashi who has been living for 4 centuries now. Ayakashi introduces himself as the Great Shirogane, but Matsuri thinks of him as a minority as Shirogane yaps, and they get into a verbal fight. Suzu watches them, and she steals Shirogane from Matsuri as she cannot feel the spiritual energy, even though Matsuri warns her. She tickles Shirogane's coochie, but when she is about to leave, Matsuri runs faster than Flash to stop her. But when he bows himself, he sees the special meat sacks 101, including the black panties that Suzu has never changed. Matsuri gets into disbelief and begins to fondle her thighs, but she kneecaps his ass away. Though he managed to save himself by turning himself into a log, he was still hit by her knee. In the end, she appreciates his concerns, but she will leave Shirogane somewhere herself and thinks that Matsuri has changed. As she gets herself away on the cycle, she can see all of the Ayakashi all over her and converses with Shirogane as he asks about her and Matsuri's relationship. In the beginning, Suzu was a loner and loser who used to tell everyone that she could see ghosts, but everybody called her a liar until Matsuri joined her team who could also see the Ayakashi. Both of the kids used to play with Ayakashi, until suddenly Matsuri's attitude changed, and Suzu used her big brain to understand what happened to him. Matsuri became the man of his family as he started to follow his grandfather's footsteps, which was to exorcise the Ayakashi for people's safety. As she zooms away on the cycle with Shirogane, Matsuri fights a human-faced spider Ayakashi who has been hooping all of the traffic around the city. The Kazumaki family specializes in wing technique, and Matsuri show-offs his best move to destroy the Ayakashi once and for all. Suzu goes to a shrine with Shirogane and rants like an Instagram user but on steroids about how Matsuri shoos away all of the Ayakashi around her, even though they did not hurt her. But Shirogane understands that Matsuri knows the truth. She pulls up with another crepe and remembers how they fight every day now in school, but since they are in high school, things should get spicy between them now as she drools all over Matsuri. Basically, she likes her. Shirogane fumes and asks himself why she likes the brat. He cannot stand humans as they get into banging mode too early, but he says to himself that he will not let it happen as he grins. At the Kazumaki household, Matsuri's grandfather enjoys the Goody magazine while Matsuri gives his report to him. He begins to wonder why Suzu told him that he changed, and his grandfather hears him muttering. He explains the situation to him, and when he hears about the name Shirogane, his grandfather cracks his back and tells him that Suzu is in danger. Although Matsuri is a great Ayakashi hunter, he lacks the ability to see through their nature since the stronger the Ayakashi, the harder they are to detect. According to his grandfather, Shirogane is the king of Ayakashi, but when it comes to women, he falls short of his manhood as Suzu tickles him. As she continues to massage him, she makes a goofy face and Shirogane feels as if she's putting her fingers inside his no-no place. Shirogane understands the power of an Ayakashi medium, and Suzu asks what he means by that. The humans from whom the life energy seeps from their body are the mediums, and can take the power of an Ayakashi to another level as Shirogane takes his real and malicious form. Matsuri runs to help Suzu as his grandfather tells him about how Suzu is one fine woman, and since she is an Ayakashi medium, she can become a fanny magnet for much more powerful Ayakashi as they don't have exorcism powers. Matsuri understands the assignment and moves his ass to help Suzu. At the shrine, Suzu asks Shirogane if Matsuri knows about her situation, and she remembers all of the times when Matsuri dropped her plans to follow his family tradition. When he moves to eat Suzu, she sees Matsuri and calls him a moron since he did not tell her before, and he jumps in to save her from Shirogane. When Suzu asks how he knows about the location, he whips out his romance technique as he tells how much time they have spent together. Suzu blushes as she sees Matsuri, and Shirogane becomes all jealous to see them lovey-dovey because he could get someone's love in his life. Matsuri uses his wind technique to raise him up and takes out his grandfather's scroll, which has the power to seal the Ayakashi god himself. However, when he uses the spell to seal him, Shirogane fantasizes how they would romance together, and right before the scroll closes, he uses his ultimate technique, which causes Matsuri to become startled for a minute. Matsuri fails to capture Shirogane, and when he escapes, Matsuri finds his chest heavy. Suddenly, Suzu loses her pickle when she notices that Matsuri has transformed into a girl by Shirogane so-called ultimate technique, and she becomes all jelly to see the man receive bigger badonkas than her. Shirogane roams the streets as most of his powers are now sealed, but he does not have to worry about Matsuri since he has turned him into a girl. He promises to return with his whole strength, and at the Kazumaki household, Matsuri's grandfather loses all hope as he does not know how to dispel the gender bend. Matsuri looks at himself in the mirror as he plays with his big meat packs until suddenly Suzu arrives and sees him packing guns bigger than her. His grandfather asks him to accept that he's not a man anymore. And this begins the odd life of the gender-bending Matsuri with his girlfriend, Suzu. The next morning, Suzu arrives at Kazumaki's household to help Matsuri with his twin peaks with her old sports bra, but she feels defeated as his size is double the size of her sack holders. His grandpa silently drinks tea and sits outside as he wonders how Suzu came after so long to take Matsuri to school. When the girls arrive, the grandpa stares at the open windows, and Suzu cannot believe how cute the boy who she likes turns out to become such a fine woman. His grandfather tells him to keep an eye on Suzu as she might get attacked by another Ayakashi. And then they leave for school for such a normal day of girls' life together. Thanks to his grandfather's contact with the principal, Matsuri is now allowed to return to school as a girl. Suzu wonders how did Matsuri adapt to his newfound body. Well, of course, he's a boy and he gets to fondle his big guns daily. However, Suzu tells him to stop with that. But when he asks what she would do if she turns into a boy one day, Suzu passes a dirty-ass grin and flushes all over the place as she says she would never inspect her own body, but her face speaks for her own intentions. They walk and plan to catch Shirogane to revert the gender bend. Suzu sees an Ayakashi, and as she tries to tame it, Matsuri pulls her favorite man-milk crepe, and she shoves it down her throat as he tells her to control herself. They continue to go downhill, and when they reach the bus stop, Suzu sits in the front seat but Matsuri goes back to have some privacy. Suzu wonders why he was sitting alone, and sees a smartphone in his hand. Since Matsuri started his training, they grow distant, but that fella silently plays a game on his smartphone. Suzu stops herself to ask for his number now, and they finally reach the school. Matsuri and Suzu sit in the same class thanks to his grandfather's connection, and the whole class has become all nutty over the arrival of Matsuri as a girl since they do not know the truth. Suzu's friends, Yayoi and Lucy, are big fans of her upper legs, and Yayoi goes low enough to lick them up that honestly anyone would. Matsuri watches them and thinks this is not his problem, but when Lucy notices his appearance, she becomes excited to see him in action. Lucy and Yayoi ask Suzu to introduce them to him, but he runs away and Suzu wishes to follow him. She rushes down the hallway until a grumpy old fella tells her to stop running as the class is about to start, but she steps on his ego and runs away either way. On the school grounds, Matsuri confronts Shirogane, who arrives at the school to get him to give him the sealing scroll, which took his powers, and in return, he will dispel the gender bend spell. He tries to pull him into his trap as he asks if he wants to return to a boy, but since this might cause security concerns for Suzu, he denies the offer since he looks like a pretentious Gen Z kid. Shirogane asks Matsuri if he knows about the sealing tower on Mount Jiboshi, where a powerful Ayakashi killed multiple people and was sealed at the tower. However, Shirogane unseals him in his useless form and tries to summon the Ayakashi. Poor Shirogane feels embarrassed since the Ayakashi didn't come out, but suddenly, Suzu screams from God knows where, and they rush toward her location. A giant ugly bastard hentai protagonist looks at Suzu and tries to eat her until Matsuri arrives and jumps straight inside Suzu, which puts them in almost a steamy scene, and Matsuri uses his wind-slash technique to destroy the Ayakashi in pieces. Ayakashi dies, and Shirogane wonders how Matsuri killed Tatter in one shot. Matsuri sits with his legs wide open, and Suzu thinks that even though he is a girl, he's super cool. However, he apologizes for being naive and asks her to introduce him to her friends, the meat fanatics Yale and Lucy. The girls introduce themselves to him, and they drool all over him as they see a tomboy with big racks. Suzu remembers how Matsuri wants to save her no matter what, even if it means befriending her friends, and it all narrows down to that he's a boy. They sit on the bus to return home, and Suzu finally makes the move of exchanging numbers with him. Shirogane spectates them like a Call of Duty player, and claims he has already planned his next move. When Matsuri returns home, he asks his grandfather about the relationship between him and the cat on steroids. His grandfather fought against Shirogane for a decade, But when he became stronger than ever, he stopped interacting with human beings. Nobody could expect that Shirigane's next victim would be Suzu, which makes everyone realize that her thighs do pack a punch of Haku, her life force. The next day, Matsuri explains to Suzu about Haku and Kon as she has a massive load of them, which is the reason Shirigane tries to hunt her down efficiently. As she hears this, Suzu thinks of herself as a sweet woman whom people love to devour, but Matsuri gives her a reality check. Matsuri wants to take a leak. And since he is a man from the inside, he enters the male bathroom instinctively. As the boys talk about rational women, Matsuri enters and tries to take a leak into a urinal until the grumpy-ass man comes again and kicks her out. Suzu stands with Yaoi and Lucy as they laugh at this situation, and Shirigane continues to watch them. At home, Matsuri suffers from the monthly girl syndrome time, and his grandfather leaves to thank people in the neighborhood. He decides to take a bath, and as he wonders how being a girl is hard, he finally feels the joy of seeing his badonkas this big. Suddenly, Suzu knocks on the window, and she tells him that she's worried about the scroll as Shirigane will come again to steal it. While Matsuri tries to comfort her, Shirigane reveals himself as he takes the form of Suzu and takes the scroll away. Shirigane thinks he is finally free from Matsuri. He rushes on him from behind as he reveals his glorious body until he uses his ninja technique to suit up. He uses his wind technique to eat him away. And Suzu is at home for a massage session and remembers the steamy things that happened today. As she thinks about his love for him, she sees Shirigane all tied up by Matsuri. She runs outside to stop him since if he exorcises Shirigane, he will not be able to return to his original body. He sees this as a chance and tries to console himself with Suzu, but Matsuri tells her to get away because he has to do it since he's the king of Ayakashi, even if he stays as a girl forever. The love flower blooms and Suzu stops his hand right before it hits Shirigane. When he asks her about this whole mind-boggling situation, she says that she will not be able to live without his boy self. So, in the end, Matsuri tries to answer her in the most neutral way and decides to take Shirigane as his pet since he cannot let the king of Ayakashi roam freely. After the shitshow, Suzu returns home and eats a turd-looking bun as she thinks about how to repay Matsuri since he saved her twice now. Since Shirigane wants to devour her as she's super sweet, she decides to make something even sweeter that outpowers her body nectar, and at night, she makes white cream balls. When she tastes it, she praises herself since only a loser can do that, and this might just poof Shirigane away. The morning breaks and Matsuri sleeps all rowdy with the god sealing scroll between his canyon. Shirigane sees this as his golden chance and tries to swoop away the scroll, but Matsuri knows how to stay conscious in his sleep, and he grabs him like a baby. As Matsuri flames his ass, he receives a text message from Suzu, who asks how is his life with Shirigane now. He tries to reply, but Shirigane tries to see the messages, and Matsuri lectures the goofy cat. After today's off, Shirigane meets with Matsuri's grandfather, Kamezaki Seijin, who's nothing but an old pervert who plays games and watches idol videos at home since Matsuri takes his place. Shirigane calls his successor an odd one since he cannot believe how Matsuri takes the king of Ayakashi as his pet, which makes him inflate but in reverse. Matsuri enters the room and explains how he had no choice but to do that since Suzu stops him. He strikes back and tells how his femininity has overcome masculinity, which makes a shot on his back, but he controls his anger and gives the food that he makes to Shirigane. Shirigane thinks about how this man has a likable side, but as soon as he sees the food, it's nothing but bull crap with leftover things. They begin to fight until Suzu arrives, and she gives her cream balls, also called Suzu Dango, to Shirigane. When she gives him the dangos, he mutters how he can be tamed from that, but suddenly, when he puts the creamy essence inside his mouth, he floats away as if he belongs to a dark alley and dives deep into the dangos. Matsuri receives a text from Suzu, where she says how things can settle down if she becomes friends with Shirigane. But Matsuri denies her idea in his head. Seijin calls her a powerful woman since she's not afraid of the Ayakashi who tried to eat her up. No wonder Matsuri adored her from the start and used her as her idol. He tries to deny the so-called girly compliment, but Seijin tells him how he was afraid of Ayakashi in childhood, and how Seijin used to save him every time. When he was a minor, he ran away into the forest to escape from an Ayakashi, but when he fell, the Ayakashi said that he would eat him. However, Suzu saved the day as she called back the Ayakashi, and Matsuri saw all types of Ayakashi around her as she claimed that it was fine now. This generic backstory is one of the reasons why Matsuri would stay as a girl to save someone he adores. As he talks about this situation with Seijin, they suddenly hear someone on the door, and Matsuri swipes out shuriken from his badonkas to throw them at the door, but there is nothing but a feather. However, Seijin says that the feather belongs to an Ayakashi, and that Ayakashi might be the one who serves their colleagues. He hopes this does not bring any trouble in the house, and somewhere far away, an exorcist ninja fights with an Ayakashi whose pet is a bird, and he warns his owner that they're up against the Kazumaki. The Exorcist Zero hits the Ayakashi and now plans to remove Matsuri from his path. The girls see the club announcements at school, but Matsuri cannot take part in them since he has a lot to do in his home as well. Yaoi snaps and tells her to either become a secretary or a Goody Magazine's pin-up model while the Exorcist watches them. 6 months ago, Matsuri was ordered to go on a mission with the Exorcist, who decided to take his head now. He arrived at the jungle by Seijin's orders to aid the lightning-fast clan called Ninokuru, while Matsuri was all excited to work with him. The other exorcist treated him like a baby and threatened to abandon him if he made a mistake. However, he underestimated him since he cleared out the whole area before he could even grasp it. Even though they could be rivals, he becomes jealous to see him getting all girly around the girls, and they gush him all over the place. Soga, the exorcist, moves away as his bird Ayakashi tells him about another Ayakashi in the school who grooms himself in the courtyard. Soga walks into the hallway and it seems people make him out to be as young thug, but he's not truly humble under God. He reaches down the courtyard just to see Shirogane lying on the bench, who grooms himself, but he thinks that Soga cannot see him. Matsuri walks with Suzu as he massages his tank shells since Yaoi took the milk out of them. Matsuri hears and sees Soga with Shirogane as he tries to exorcise him, but he runs away and Soga tries to follow him. However, Matsuri heads down and follows him, but since he's disappointed, he doesn't even bat an eye over him. As Matsuri follows him, he remembers the mission he did with Soga, where they were attacked by a bunch of Hercules-type powerful Ayakashi, but they managed to survive. However, Soga was not impressed by his strength, but the conviction he showed against the Ayakashi. But since he turned into a busty woman, he has lost his respect in his eyes. He uses his choker to transform into an exorcist uniform and zooms away at the speed of light as Matsuri is silently left behind. He thinks that Soga might actually kill Shirogane, but since the threat to Suzu will collapse, he decides to stop. On the other hand, Suzu hopes Matsuri will bring Shirogane back alive, but she does now know that he has stopped his hunt. Shirogane continues to run in the woods until Soga finds and tries to attack him, but Shirogane dodges it. However, as he moves in to attack him for the last time, Matsuri arrives with the display of his odd choice of panties by using a signboard to fly, and he takes away Shirogane for the sake of Suzu's happiness. As he tells him about Suzy, who is an Ayakashi medium, Soga throws a kunai at him, which instead wishes her skirt up and he sees his panties. Soga becomes all red and runs away since he's scared of women, and Matsuri returns to school with Shirogane to meet Suzu. She shows her gratitude to Matsuri as he lives up to her expectations, and she promises to become a good friend to Shirogane. Matsuri sees Suzu's old self in her, and he's happy that things have not changed as of now. The next day, Suzu and Matsuri wait for the bus while Matsuri tells her about Soga, who might just kill Shirogane if he decides to do something funny. Suzu says she will order Shirogane to become her slave, a good boy, so he cannot do anything negative that can grab the attention of Soga. However, since he's the god of Ayakashi, he will act mischievous. As they continue to wait, Soga watches them from the bushes like he's a member of the Vietnam War and understands that the purple-haired girl is Suzu, the Ayakashi medium. In school, Yaoi shows the girls a furry-ass show and they all become fangirlish, but Matsuri stands on the side. When Yaoi tries to show the furry show to Matsuri, she slips and grabs onto Matsuri's meat pack, which reveals her rowdiness, and Lucy takes their photos. However, Matsuri moves away and says that he is someone who hates being all touchy, even with his friends. Yaoi whines like a baby as she thinks that Matsuri hates her now, but Suzu tries to cheer her up. A few moments later, sucks the tip of a lollipop and meets Matsuri on the rooftop to tell him to act a little friendly with you. He says that he is nice to them, but he does not know what to talk about with the girls since he and Soga are the same when it comes to women. Suzu breaks the sound barrier and asks what he talked about with his guy friends. But since he was considered a loser, he didn't even have those. Since the beginning, Matsuri has spent all of his time idolizing Suzu, which is the reason he never got male friends. Hell, he even became his girlfriend so he could keep a keen eye on Ayakashi. However, when he looks back, he sees Suzu showing signs of disappointment, so for her sake, he allows Suzu to backshot Yaoi and Lucy. Yaoi calls out to them to see Shirogane, who just looks like a white cat to them, but Suzu and Matsuri stand depressed to see them so lovely with the king of Ayakashi. When Yaoi tells Matsuri to pet Shirogane, he moves away, which makes her cry like an infant once again. But Suzu tells her that he's more of a dog person. Suzu and Matsuri talk with Shirogane outside, where he explains how he has become a cute pussy to deceive humans, which shows that he has lost his pride as a king of Ayakashi. Before Shirogane leaves, he warns Matsuri that Yaoi is possessed by an Ayakashi, and in the school, she continues to fall again and again. She asks Lucy if the way she fondled Matsuri's buns was wrong. and Lucy agrees. She decides to apologize to Matsuri, and Suzu enters the hallway with Matsuri after they hear about the Ayakashi who hunts Yaoi. Matsuri uses his Snip-Snap Wind 100 to lure out the Ayakashi, and they both manage to see the Ayakashi who hides on the surface and causes Yaoi to slip every time. Ayakashi reveals himself and Yaoi slips on the stairs, but Matsuri saves her with his wind technique. While Matsuri apologizes to Yaoi for acting super cold toward her even though they're friends, Suzu yaps to the Ayakashi to not cause problems again. In the end, Mitsuri asks her to become good friends with her in the future, and Yaoi happily agrees to this idea. After school, the girls sit in a class to do the girly talk and they add each other to make a group, which they name Catch If You Gets It. While the girls are at it, the grumpy old teacher plays with Shirogane outside the classroom. Suzu and Matsuri return home to do the so-called normal ritual of sending the Ayakashi back to the mountains, which endangers the humans. While Matsuri goes bonkers on the ritual, Seijin tells Suzu about how not all Ayakashi are bad. They use this ritual to send away the Ayakashi who are not harmful, but if they're a menace to the society like Shirogane, they do not kill them. Suzu feels jealous since Matsuri keeps a distance from a loner to keep her away from the Ayakashi life. The next day in school, Yaoi's favorite show reaches a conclusion where it ends with a bang romance, but Matsuri thinks these things should happen after marriage. They return from the room, and as they walk down the hallway, Soga's pet Ayakashi greets Matsuri and asks him to meet Soga in the courtyard. Matsuri moves down to the courtyard with his exorcist clothes and meets Soga, who tells him about an encounter with a wandering Ayakashi. Ayakashi unveiled a secret that speaks about how the Ayakashi mediums are a mixture of a human and Ayakashi. Matsuri's brain explodes when he learns how Suzu is an Ayakashi herself, which makes her a target of exorcism for other ninjas. However, he cannot swallow this information and tries to attack Soga, but he claims that there's a chance, so he should not become this worked up for anything. But Matsuri thinks there's no chance that it will happen, and when he gets close enough to Soga, his giant chest touches Soga. He runs away as he's scared to deal with these things. After school, in class, Suzu tries to cheer up Matsuri as he has felt down ever since he met Soga at lunchtime. She tries to get him to leak out what happened, but Matsuri mews and stays quiet. They hear Shirogane outside the class, and when they check what happened, the grumpy old man follows him for cuddles. Suzu once again makes another batch of the Suzu Dango since that's the only thing she can do to help Matsuri while he tries to return to his old body. However, she feels off as Matsuri does not tell her anything. She gulps and swallows all of the Dangos herself, and when her mother comes to try them, there's none left. She goes to her room to sleep, but cannot seem to forget the thought of how in the romance drama, the protagonist returns to his old body after his lover kisses him. She falls asleep, and Shirogane enjoys his stray cat god life on the roofs. Seijin watches his favorite idol and suddenly feels an odd presence. In the other room, Matsuri cannot seem to focus on anything ever since Soga told him about Suzu's real identity, but he fails to accept it. As he remembers the moments he has spent with Yuzu as a child, she suddenly enters his room and wakes him up. Matsuri flutters as he sees a woman this close to him for the first time. Suddenly, Suzu goes in for the kiss as Shirogane watches them do the heinous act, and his gender-bending technique becomes useless since he used it to stop their romance in the first place. But little did he know that this would become a girl-on-girl action. They continue with the banger lips-to-lips combat, and Matsuri feels all goopy as Suzu's lips are super soft. However, after he enjoys it a bit, he pushes Suzu away, but when he looks back, there's no one in the room. On the other hand, Suzu suddenly wakes up as she was asleep and feels a bit weird on her lips. Matsuri calls to tell her how someone who resembles her entered his room. While Suzu is on a call with him, he asks Seijin about this situation. He explains how it happens due to stress, which causes a person's Haku to be leaked from the inside, and it becomes a doppelganger. These doppelgangers are known as Amakage, who roam around the town without any free will. As Suzu learns about this, she asks a very beautiful question about whether the Amakage did something weird to him, and they both go into a state of oblivion as they cannot literally tell that they kissed. Suddenly, Suzu's mindless brain hurts, and when Seijin hears about her headache, he cannot believe that the possibility of her and her Amakage sharing the same senses. The enjoyment or pain that the Amakage will feel will also affect Suzu's brain. Matsuri rushes outside and asks Seijin to tell him everything that Suzu tells him through the dual-piercing phone 3000. He goes outside in his exorcist uniform and asks about Suzu's current situation. Currently, she feels as if she walks without any shoes on the road. Since Suzu has a lot of energy inside her, the Amakage will last for a long time. Matsuri reaches Suzu's signature shrine, but he does not find her there. He meets Shirogane there, who helps him to find Suzu's omakage since he cannot let his prey die before he eats her. As he's a cat, his sense of smell is strong, but the useless god takes Matsuri to a short-looking wooden doll, and they begin to fight as Matsuri calls him useless. Seijin breaks their fight as he receives a new piece of information from Suzu that she feels as if she walks on grass and smells cows everywhere. Matsuri's brain works miraculously, and he rushes toward the ranch from where Suzu buys her favorite milk crepes. Suddenly, she feels immense pains in her fingers as the omakage tries to lift the shutter up. Although images are powerful, if they share their senses with the host, they will not be able to bear the pain. Seijin tells Matsuri that her fingers are going to break, which might remove excitement from her life. He sees omakage and launches Shuriken with wind on its back. He uses his spell to transform into a limited edition Gaki crepe, and when Suzu's omakage tries to suck on it, it disappears. Both of them return to meet Suzu, and she explains that she craved milk crepes before going to sleep, so the omakage decided to fulfill her wish after she slept. She thanks Shuriken, but as he thinks he's at tsundere, he denies it and says he only did it for dangos. Matsuri asks if she thought about something else before she fell asleep, and they both blush heavily because only we know what actually happens. The next day at school, Soga receives a report from his Ayakashi about Suzu's omakage, and likewise, to his behavior, some girls arrive and run away as they see his disastrously dangerous face. Suddenly, Suzu arrives and greets Soga as if she might have cooked up a plan, and when she asks him to go out with her, he cannot believe a woman asked him out. His Ayakashi finally sees his master finally receive his springtime. She and Matsuri walk together as she tells him about her plan, which is to make him and Shuriken's bond closer. But when Matsuri tells her that he's against it, Suzu blushes and says she doesn't want to be a burden anymore, which makes Matsuri unable to look in her eyes. Suzu takes him with her for monitoring, and she meets with Soga alone, which makes him more nervous than ever. She's a wild one and takes Soga to her parents' cafe, which makes her parents believe that even their useless daughter can pull a man. As Matsuri sees them together, he wonders what they are talking about, and makes it an obvious fact that he's jealous to see his own girlfriend together with his rival. However, when Shuriken asks him about this, he denies every allegation, and Shuriken decides to have fun with Matsuri by helping him eavesdrop on their conversation. While Suzu is confident in the conversation, Soga's fear of women reaches a new peak as he thinks that fighting an Ayakashi is much easier than this. When he becomes confused on what to say, he starts to yap the Exorcist ninja's history. Suzu thanks and tells him how Matsuri never tells him this, until suddenly, he enters the cafe with a disguise. However, Suzu sees through him. When the broke family boy tries to order something from the menu, he fails to recognize any dish on the menu. While she wonders what is his motive, Soga thinks Suzu is a dangerous individual due to her power output as an Ayakashi medium. But when he returns to his senses, he sees Ponsuk in her arms already. Matsuri feels jealous as he feels she's having fun. And when Soga sees Ponsuk in her hands, he remembers the time when he saved Ponsuk. But at first, he did not want him as his pet since his appearance used to scare everyone away. However, Ponsuk did not care about that and became such good friends with him. Since Suzu is an Ayakashi medium, she knows how special his relationship is with Soga. This melts his cold heart. And on the other hand, Matsuri still feels confused, but Shuriken comes out to troll him even more. After their endeavor, Suzu and Matsuri bid farewell to Soga and they walk away. Suzu tells Matsuri how Soga told him multiple things about the Exorcist ninjas, but when he saw Matsuri, he locked his tongue as if somebody was sitting on it. No matter the outcome, Suzu is happy that Matsuri entered the cafe because he cares for her, and they walk home together as they flutter. On the other side of the road, Soga and Ponsuk finally fall for a woman for the first time as she makes him feel special, and surprisingly someone he decided to hunt down with his first instinct. At school, Lucy becomes excited to see that Matsuri is a fanboy girl or whatever of her favorite game, manga series. Lucy flexes on him with all of the collection she has, and Yaoi reveals today's PE. As soon as the cherry boy hears about the PE lecture, he tries to run away but Yaoi catches him this time. He has to reveal his mask jacks to everyone as they will change clothes together. The gang walks down to the changing rooms together, and suddenly, Matsuri becomes calm with the girls. Suzu watches him get all fully cool with Lucy and Yaoi, which makes her wonder if he will use this form to gain advantage and peek at every other girl in the locker room. Suzu thinks of this as unacceptable, so she thinks of herself in a situation where she becomes the shield of all girls while she shows herself all uncovered to Matsuri. Shuriken notices what Suzu thinks is due to her spiritual power. No matter what happens, Shuriken plans to steal the god's sealing scroll and return to his original form to eat up Suzu with butter on a hot plate. Since Shuriken knows where Matsuri keeps the scroll, he only needs the perfect opening to steal it. However, when they get into the locker room, he changes clothes at the speed of light, which prevents him from making any room for opening. and he runs away before any girl begins to change. Suzu takes a sigh of relief since Matsuri had a plan already cooked. But she feels gross because she had weird thoughts about Matsuri. Suddenly, Lucy asks Suzu if she saw Matsuri's godlike midriff, and she becomes worried that Lucy has noticed the gender bend curse. However, Lucy just wanted to click its picture, but accidentally she captured the god-sealing scroll on his back. When they reach the ground, Matsuri explains how his family is a descendant of ninjas, and that is why he has a scroll. Even if Matsuri told them the truth, nobody would believe him since Suzu knows how people would bully him like her, as she once told them about the Ayakashi. Matsuri sees Suzu, and as he runs on the track with his meat packs all over the place, he wonders if Suzu is bothered by something. Matsuri follows the three girls and suddenly ups the pace to give them an L. When he moves forward and aligns with some boys, they begin to stare at his gigantic nukes, but the girls join him from behind and tell the boys that it can get them yeeted into the jail, which makes them run away. When he sees Suzu once again, he understands that the idea of not being able to tell their friends everything is eating her up. However, this is for the best, as normal people cannot see Ayakashi, but a part of him believes that it would be epic if Yaoi and Lucy could also see the Ayakashi. The sun sets and some students at school have fun with the useless god. After the students leave, Suzu and Matsuri greet Shirogane, and Matsuri tells him to leave his useless godhood behind and start to live as a stray cat. Suddenly, Matsuri receives an alert on his Exorcist app about an Ayakashi near his school. The next second, Lucy and Yaoi arrive and show them a photo of the grumpy old man. But in the photo, there are some big black ghosts. Matsuri and Suzu call them a dangerous one, and they appear on Lucy's head. These Ayakashi are called Icon, and according to Shirogane, they're the embodiment of a human's negative emotions. But since Lucy catches them on the camera, she has captured their existence like a spell with the help of a camera. Suzu tries to take the photo in the bin, but Lucy believes this could get her the attention that her parents never gave her. While they goof around, Matsuri notices the Icon all over her body, which will suck her Haku away. So no matter what, he needs to find a way to blank Lucy's mind. Nothing new, and they force her to show them their manga collection. She sees this as a golden chance and invites everyone to come over to her house for a scandalous bath session together. Everyone's jaw drops, and the next, they cannot believe that they will take a bath with the majestic Matsuri. Lucy arrives in a big-ass limousine, and Suzu and Matsuri cannot believe how big the car is. Either way, they celebrate their time in the car, and when they reach their house, a whole mansion actually, she shows them the hot springs inside her house. The girls begin to undress, which is too much for poor Matsuri's eyes. So he moves away and says he'll bathe later, as Suzu says she will tell him if something happens. However, Yaoi and Lucy stop him from going elsewhere as they want to bond with him in the nude, which will deepen Kakafugetsu's friendship, and whoopsie, they take off his clothes. He asks them for a timeout so he can take off the clothes himself, and they finally get into the bath together. Matsuri keeps the scroll on his head, and Lucy sneaks in to take it away to make him lose his balls, but accidentally. He graces his eyes upon the bodies of Lucy and Yaoi. However, the Icon covers their body, and before he knows it, Suzu's small cluster bombs touch Matsuri's back, and he walks away from the bath as he feels weird. This situation even made Shirogane feel uncomfortable, which made him lose the opening to steal the scroll. Suddenly, Lucy falls down as the Icon continues to suck her life energy out. And when Matsuri tells her to get up and go to sleep, she falls unconscious. She enters a dream where she arrives at the library to show the manga collection to Matsuri. But when she looks at her phone, the Icon comes out of the picture. Everyone worries for Lucy as she silently lies in the bed. And when Yaoi goes out of the room to get a goodie drink for her, Matsuri puts his pinwheel tip inside her mouth and uses the wind's blessing to get into her dream. He enters Lucy's dream in his original body, which makes her fail to recognize him as he fights the Icon. After he completely defeats it, he puts his pinwheel in her mouth to extract the Icon into the real world, so he can finally put an end to this atrocity. After he's done with his main objective, Matsuri whooshes away from her dream, and the next morning, Lucy finally wakes. Everyone is happy to see her back in action. And as she mentions about a boy who saves her in the dream, Matsuri feels happy to see that he's still a boy from the inside. When Lucy checks her phone, the Icon from the photo is removed, and she starts to show Matsuri his girlish photos. Matsuri begins to feel uncomfortable and tells her to remove them, but she sends them in their group. When they sit in the limo, he makes a grumpy face just like a girl as everyone plans their next night out. While they travel in the limo, a Kappa Ayakashi tells a blonde painter about Matsuri and the Ayakashi medium, Suzu. The painter makes the Kappa sketch, and in return for the information, he gives him a sketch of him. However, the Kappa tears it apart and asks for the identity of the artist. The blonde man reveals himself to be a traveler, a wandering artist who takes an interest in Ayakashi. The next day, Soga calls Matsuri to meet him outside the school. He reaches the spot and says that he should not yap anything related to Suzu and Ayakashi mediums. However, this fella has fallen in love with Suzu, and Matsuri fails to comprehend his words at first. When Soga asks if he feels okay about it, Matsuri says he's fine since even if they grew up together, he doesn't have a thing for her. But when he tries to confirm it the second, he makes a doubtful face as he blushes. Suzu plays with Shirogane on the bench, and Matsuri brings Soga to her for his one-sided confession. When he tries to utter the words of love, he loses his grip on reality and says that he will protect Matsuri. He becomes all fluttered and runs away, which makes her feel that he's a rival in her love for Matsuri. Suzu continues to edge Shirogane and gives him a dango for his behavior until he and Matsuri feel an Ayakashi arrive at the school. But it is no one other than the blonde artist who talks with the kappa on a bridge. Suzu and Matsuri enter the insides of the school to find the Ayakashi, who seemingly has a much more powerful aura than any other Ayakashi that Matsuri has faced before. They continue to run around the hallways until they see the principal and the grumpy teacher, who get all goody with the blonde artist, named Utagawa Garaku, as he comes here for references. When Suzu and Matsuri see him, they understand that Garaku is indeed the Ayakashi in the school, and their teachers call them out to meet him, and he begins to note down their details as he wants a story for a major bag. Matsuri cannot seem to understand the unlimited energy aura that leaks from Garaku. The girls show him around the school, and he loves to see the smell of youth. As they continue to walk with him around the school, Suzu breaks the ice and asks if he's an Ayakashi. Garaku walks and says they're a curious one, and he knows how Matsuri is an Ayakashi medium. Matsuri gets all possessive to save her, but this instead gives Garaku a view as he lies down and sketches them from top to bottom. Apparently, he knows everything about them, including the gender bend spell on Matsuri by Shirogane. He asks Shirogane's whereabouts as he thought he would be with them. However, when Garaku entered the school, he said that there was someone he hated in the school and whoops away from the area. This makes Garaku feel sad since he fully agrees with the idea of Shirogane as the king. And suddenly, he uses his pull-out game to take out his favorite brush and spreads ink all over the place as he asks Matsuri to give him the God Sealing Scroll. Garaku draws tentacles on the floor for some sticky action, and the tentacles begin to uncloth Matsuri to find the scroll on him, even if it means to look inside her. He continues his body expedition until Soga arrives and cuts down all of the tentacles, which gives Matsuri to change into his exorcist gear. Garaku knows about Soga's family tree as he learns about it from the Ayakashi grapevine, and brings all of his information on the table as if he lives inside his walls. On the other hand, Soga knows about him as well, a prestigious Ayakashi who has lived in the human society and has drawn since the Edo period. Since he had not posed harm to humans before, the hunters kept a keen eye on him, but this has changed now. He attacks him at the speed of light, but Garaku makes his decoy within the last second and ties him up in chains with his art. He hears Yaoi and Lucy approach his location, and he instantly makes a delusional wall that manages to make the dementia-suffering girls a jackass. Garaku brags about his ability, but Matsuri has enough of his face and tries to attack her. However, she cannot top his speed, and he launches a full-scale animal attack on her that spawns numerous rabbits and frogs who fondle her sacks. They try to steal the scroll away but make a 180 move and steal from them. When she tries to run, the octopus is still alive and grabs her in an erotic manner to steal the scroll. Matsuri feels useless and screams at the top of his lungs, but suddenly, Suzu emits light which stops the octopus, who holds her. Suddenly, the octopus turns against Garaku and starts to beat his creation. Suzu manages to hijack his spell, and he's impressed to see it, but when he asks her to show more of her powers, Matsuri uses his wind spell to spread the water from the faucet, which clears out all of his art. Garaku is astonished to see Matsuri dispel his attack with all brainers, but when he moves him to execute him, Garaku bows down. Matsuri feels confused, but Suzu tells him to stop as he did not do anything to harm them. Suzu asks him to tell her about Ayakashi mediums, and he explains how she has the potential to dethrone the useless cat of a god and become the king herself since she's a strong medium. They become confused, and they return home. Matsuri asks Seijin about Garaku, and he wonders why one of the strongest Ayakashi just showed himself up. So they decide to keep a keen eye on him, but Seijin has to go to a meeting tomorrow. To let Suzu know, Matsuri visits her house and meets with her younger brother, who just hit puberty, and when Suzu tells Matsuri to enter, her brother stares right at Mitsuri's double prize. Matsuri enters her room for the first time in his entire life, and he sees a woman's room for the first time in his life. He sees his and Suzu's photo in the room, and suddenly when Suzu sits down, Garaku makes his not-so-dramatic entrance as he wants to see Shirogane. Everyone is shocked, and he draws a portable door to enter the room and steals Shirogane away to catch up on the lore. Now, Matsuri and Suzu sit alone in the room, and they both become shy to talk to each other, but Suzu brings up the time when Garaku showed them what he meant by the Ayakashi god. She holds enough energy to heal every Ayakashi around the world. and similar in the past, someone like her was praised as a god. Matsuri tells her to be self-aware with her powers now, and she should learn to send her Kan energy to an Ayakashi, but she somehow managed to do it either way with the octopus. However, Matsuri calls her lucky until suddenly she picks up a pillow and turns into an Ayakashi for a few moments. It makes them fall into the bed together, and the Ayakashi dispels. Suddenly, Suzu remembers how Giraku told her that she could dispel curses by Ayakashi. She instantly undresses him to remove his gender bend curse. But sadly, her dreams shatter as if someone dropped a hammer on ice. However, he still feels her power, and when they get too close to each other, Giraku spies on them, and her brother enters the room. The blooming flower of youth escapes the room instantly, and Giraku draws her brother as his reaction is stunning. In the end, Giraku feels glad that his decision to return here actually works out. Giraku and Shirogane are outside of their bedroom and watch all of this transpire. Giraku tells Shirogane how impressed he is by Suzu's show of skills and how he thinks that she could be closer to Ayakashi than a human being. Giraku tells Shirogane if Suzu can't control her powers, an Amakage will spawn. Shirogane responds saying it already happened. Giraku asks Shirogane to tell the kids his objective and team up with them. Shirogane says that he will never team up with humans. Looks like he's not getting that Fortnite win today. Matsuri is seen playing Candy Crush on his phone. He's thinking back to what happened earlier with Suzu. Shirogane barges in and breaks the news to him that another Amakage spawned, and it's a bad one. We later cut to a nasty-looking Icon chasing Ayakashi down a forest path. Matsuri and Shirogane are spying on the Icon chasing innocent Ayakashi. Matsuri points out to Shirogane that he is going to take care of it before it reaches its second phase. Matsuri tells Shirogane that she should have stayed at home and played Genshin with Gramps. Matsuri lets him know that he won't get the chance to steal the scroll before setting off to defeat the Icon. Matsuri jumps and starts to transform, but the gods have blessed us with Matsuri's outfit almost being torn to pieces. Shirogane calls him a dirty ninja, and Matsuri is shocked that he is going to fight like this. Matsuri easily overpowers the Icon. We later cut to Matsuri talking to Soga about his ninja gear being damaged in yesterday's fight against the Icon. Matsuri tells Soga to be careful, otherwise he's going to end up like him. Matsuri tells Soga that he will stop by Kurogi to get his gear fixed. Soga responds by saying that he can't go with Matsuri because he needs to train after what happened to him in his fight with Giraku. Soga feels down after saying all of that, but Matsuri reassures Soga that they both will get stronger and it won't happen again. Soga blushes hearing this, forgetting that Matsuri is a guy. Soga reminds Matsuri to be prepared for battle even if he doesn't have his gear, because Omiko City seems to be pretty unstable right now. Afterward, Suzu is seen using her Haku to make a paper crane fly but fails miserably. Giraku then yaps like a nerd, saying how wrong Suzu's movements were on the paper crane. Suzu is puzzled by all of this. Giraku advises Suzu on how she should continue to practice her powers on the paper cranes. He later adds that if she continues to get better, she might be able to undo Shirogane's spell. Shirogane then thinks to himself how he shouldn't trust Giraku, as Giraku doesn't seem to be on his side. Matsuri finds Suzu, but he's stunned by Giraku's presence. Giraku then leaves, and Matsuri tells Suzu to not talk to Giraku alone as he could be up to something. Matsuri and Suzu are seen walking towards Kurogi. Suzu is surprised to find out that Kurogi is a toy store, but Matsuri reassures her that there's more than meets the eye. Both of them enter the store, and Matsuri starts saying that there are real exorcist ninja tools mixed among the toys, and there's a spell cast on them so normal people can't recognize them. Shirogane finds an Ayakashi glue trap and says that it will rip his fur out, but later gets jump scared by an Icon. He is taken hostage by it and is later transported outside of the shop. Matsuri and Suzu go out and can't believe how many Icon are running rampant in the city. They hear a voice from behind and see a pink-haired girl skating on her rollerblades to catch Shirogane. She finally catches up to the Icon and sucks the Icon in her ceiling too. Matsuri informs that the girl is the successor of the Kurogi clan who specializes in craftsmanship to become an exorcist ninja. She's later revealed as Kurogi Ryo by Matsuri. Ryo goes to Matsuri and lets him know that the Icon she captured earlier escaped and wants to research it. Ryo asks who is the girl he is with, and Matsuri introduces Suzu as his childhood friend, but we know at this point they are more than that. The Icon escapes from the weak-ass ceiling too. Matsuri deals with the Icon in a flash, and Ryo is so happy from this display of strength, she jumps on top of Matsuri and gives a holy Ekai scene. Ryo later says while on top of him that she isn't surprised by this since Matsuri was his first, and Suzu is stun-locked by hearing that. Later on, we see Matsuri fighting a wooden dummy in a dojo for Ryo to get Matsuri's physical data. Suzu and Ryo are talking to each other while they are examining Matsuri's fight against the dummy. Ryo has been getting really excited for the wrong reasons ever since Matsuri turned into a girl. Ryo is happy with the data she is receiving from Matsuri. Suzu starts getting insecure about Ryo being close to Matsuri ever since she left him, and starts thinking of the best fanservice we will ever see of Ryo. and Matsuri being close. Suzu asks Ryo how long she's known Matsuri. Ryo answers with the exact date she met Matsuri. Ryo fondly remembers the time when Matsuri told him that he would come to visit whenever he wanted new ninja gear. Ryo was very happy with this response and was happy someone recognized her skills. Ryo exclaims that she has to support Matsuri with everything she has. Just when Matsuri was about to stop fighting the dummy, it started tickling Matsuri. Ryo found out there was an Ayakashi in the dummy. We later find out Shuriken is trying to steal the scroll with the wooden dummy. Matsuri doesn't want to go full power and break the dummy, but Ryo reassures him that it's alright and permits him to break it. Matsuri escapes by pulling a Sekiro on the dummy. Suzu is amazed to see a part of Matsuri's world if Shuriken never showed up. Suzu tried out Ryo's exorcist ninja gear and almost went fully nude. Suzu screams to turn her back to normal. Afterward, we see Matsuri thinking to himself alone about what has happened so far. Matsuri thinks back to Ryo telling him how an Ayakashi affected his ninja gear when he transformed. This got Matsuri thinking about how Suzu could be the god of Ayakashi and could undo Shuriken's spell on him. Shuriken is seen sitting on top of the temple. He thinks to himself the number of Icon could be increasing because of him and how he could be here in this very town. We start by zooming from space onto Earth and slowly reach a blonde girl going to a location where she saw from Twitter that a UFO was spotted near the location. She mutters to herself that this spot is the highest chance of success for her UFO summoning ritual. She raises her hands to the sky and starts singing in harmony to bring the UFO to Earth. Blondes are definitely dumb. Later, Matsuri tells Suzu how he got his ninja gear from Kurogi via drone earlier this morning. Suzu apologizes for Matsuri's gear being broken because of her. Matsuri tells her not to worry as his ninja gear has been upgraded with enchantments. Shuriken jumps onto the ledge of the balcony and stares off into the distance. Matsuri tells Suzu that he's been doing that a lot recently. Maybe he didn't clutch that one game of Fortnite. Toba opens the door to the roof and yells at Matsuri that someone wants to talk to him. Two boys wanted to exchange line IDs with Matsuri. Matsuri responded saying that she didn't even know them, but the boys said they found Matsuri cute. They don't know it's a trap. Matsuri cannot believe this and is overwhelmed by being called cute. The two boys further complimented Matsuri for him being a total knockout. Soga is standing behind Matsuri and scares the boys off. Soga asks Matsuri if he interrupted something and Matsuri responds saying that Soga saved him. Matsuri further adds that the boys didn't even know that he was a guy. Soga thinks to himself how that is true, but the only reason he talks to Matsuri in the first place is that he knows he's a guy, but if it's just based on appearance then that's another story. Soga tells himself to snap out of it. Matsuri lets Soga know that an icon popped up at Kurogi and gives a brief rundown on what icon is. Matsuri asks Soga if something is causing it. Soga answers back saying that they don't have enough data on Icon, but know that Icon wanders without shape and mutates into something that has human elements. Toba, Lucy, and Suzu are spying on Matsuri and Soga. Toba asks Suzu if Soga would be a good match for Matsuri. Suzu is baffled by this and says no to that in a heartbeat. Toba asks Lucy what she thinks about Matsuri and Soga, but Lu doesn't care and is looking at Twitter for UFO sighting. Shuriken is standing on a tree bark watching a small UFO wander in the forest and says that there is no way that thing is related to him. Matsuri and Suzu show up and ask Shuriken what he's doing here, but he brushes them off saying it's none of their business. Matsuri transforms into her ninja gear and tries to chase the small-looking flying hat with his net. We later cut to Lucy performing her goofy chant to attract the UFOs. She thinks to herself how many intelligent life forms are out of Earth, and if they ever come down to Earth, she hopes that the aliens realize her good intentions and will appear before her. She continues her chant hoping it arrives. Matsuri is seen chasing Ayakashi with all her might. Suzu asks Shuriken what kind of Ayakashi it could be, and Shuriken responds by saying it's a Sohachiban, which is the Tsukimagami of a Buddhist symbol. Suzu points out that they are near a road and hopes that the Ayakashi doesn't distract a driver and get into a wreck. Shuriken starts getting hungry after watching Suzu stuff her mouth full of dango and begs her to give him some, but she refuses. Shuriken gets mad and then transforms into Matsuri's male form. Suzu is shocked by this and starts blushing because she hasn't seen Matsuri's true form in a while now. Shuriken goes in for the kill and starts whispering into Suzu's ears to give him the sweet dango. Suzu finally gives in and throws the dango in the air, and Shuriken flies off to catch it. He catches it and starts eating it in front of Lucy. Lucy is shocked to see the boy who saved her in her dreams in front of her. Lucy is thinking to herself how Matsuri could be an alien. Lucy introduces herself to him and Matsuri responds saying if it isn't Lucy. Lucy is shocked that he knows her name. Lucy thinks to herself how maybe the alien knows her intentions are good and wants to be friends with her. Lucy asks for his name and Shuriken thinks to himself if this is a bad idea, but decides to wing it and says that his name is Shuramatsu. Lucy starts interrogating where Shuriken is from and what his age could be, and Shuramatsu, who is Shuriken in secret, answers all of them. Matsuri finally catches the pesky-ass Sohachibun and talks with Suzu about what their next move should be. Matsuri and Suzu are shocked to find the male version of Matsuri sitting with Lucy. Matsuri is stunned to find that it's Shirogane. Shirogane started acting drunk, and Suzu pointed out it could be because of the catnip she added in the dango earlier. The drunk Shirogane accidentally confesses his love for Lucy, but Lucy doesn't know that Shirogane is looking at her as a piece of dango. Matsuri and Suzu are astonished by this, and Suzu pushes Matsuri onto the Sohachibun they caught earlier, and it escapes. Shirogane also escapes, leaving Lucy to think about what just happened to her. We cut back to school with Matsuri, who grabs and asks Shirogane why he transforms into his male version, and Suzu is happy that she got to see Matsuri's male version after so long. Matsuri thinks to himself if Shirogane is after the God Sealing Scroll and is surprised by Ryo. Ryo and Matsuri are drinking tea, and Ryo asks Matsuri how his new ninja gear feels. Matsuri responds saying that it fits perfectly. Matsuri says to her that this isn't what she came to ask for. Ryo says that he's right and asks if he wants to go back to being a boy. She later added saying maybe it didn't bother Matsuri that he's a girl now, but Matsuri responded that a lot of things are now more complicated ever since he turned into a girl. Ryo then unleashes a robot and says that she's going to steal Matsuri's gender-bent curse. Ryo then says how much she loves scents and how it is her fetish as well. That turned spicy really quickly. Suzu and Shirogane are seen walking to Matsuri's house. They stumble upon Ryo smelling Matsuri's armpits. Just a normal day in Omiko City. Ryo doesn't deny how much she loves scents. Ryo reassures Matsuri how this is important to break the curse. Ryo tells the robot to pull out the ingredients of the scent she smelled. She then burned it into an incense, hoping it would negate the effects of Matsuri's curse. The incense only reduced Matsuri's breast size. What a downgrade. Ryo tells Matsuri she can't wait for more room for improvement. Suddenly, Matsuri's breast enlarges to the size of cantaloupes and bursts out of his shirt, shocking everyone. We see Matsuri and Suzu walking near the river on their way to school. Matsuri mentions to Suzu why she's glancing at his nukes. Suzu tells Matsuri that she's glad they are back to normal. Matsuri says that they shrunk back to normal when he woke up this morning. He also adds that he had a hard time sleeping because of that. He also mentions that his shoulders are still sore from yesterday. Suzu thinks to herself how she wishes for Matsuri to return all the way back to being a guy. She thinks back to Garaku saying to her that if she mastered the Ayakashi medium, she could lift Matsuri's curse and turn him back into a guy. She thinks aloud that she can do this, and Matsuri doesn't understand, and Suzu tells him it's nothing to worry about. We see someone afar watching Matsuri and Suzu. Afterward, we see a boy in the school asking two girls where Suzu might be. Matsuri is seen talking to two boys about his performance in the basketball match. The two boys are fans of Matsuri and promise him that they can turn him into an idol. Matsuri says that there is no way in hell that that's going to happen. Toba, Suzu, and Lucy are amazed at Matsuri's popularity skyrocketing. Toba is expecting Soga to come in and rescue Matsuri. Toba hopes that Suzu and herself can find love. Out of nowhere, a green-haired boy asks to talk with Suzu from behind. Toba is jealous of this, ushers Suzu to go to him. Suzu is thinking to herself how she can turn him down without making things awkward, but the boy whispers to her that Ayakashi needs her help, and she is stunned by this. Matsuri asks for Suzu from Toba, and Toba responds that she's with the hot guy from earlier. Matsuri, hearing this, runs to save Suzu, but Toba and Lucy stop him from doing that, saying that he shouldn't get in the way of Suzu. Matsuri is worried for Suzu, thinking to himself that the guy could not be human. The green-haired boy shows an injured Ayakashi to Suzu, saying it might have gotten run over once it entered the forest. The boy also mentions that normal people can't see Ayakashi after all. Suzu tells him that he can see Ayakashi and doesn't know what to call him, but he finishes her sentence by saying that his name is Hinajiki Sasuke. He tells her that he was born this way. Hijiki wanted to help it but didn't know how. He said that he saw Suzu walking to school and having a good time with a white Ayakashi cat. Hinajiki thought that maybe Suzu could help him. Hinajiki says that he also thought of asking for help from Matsuri as well, but he looked scared. Hinajiki mentions how shy he is and how afraid he's been of Ayakashi all his life, but decides to help this injured one for the first time. Suzu then picks up the injured Ayakashi and says that she will try her best to heal it. She thinks to herself to picture replenishing its life force, and she uses her powers to heal the injured Ayakashi. And the Ayakashi starts moving around very happily. Looks like someone saw an Ekai scene. Hinajiki says that he's surprised that an Ayakashi medium can heal injuries of an Ayakashi, and then proceeds to munch the poor Ayakashi. Suzu is shocked at what Hijiki just did. Hinajiki says that he's amazed at Suzu's Haku and kidnaps her by teleporting her away with himself. Matsuri and the others gather around Suzu's last known location and pick her phone up from the ground. Shirogane tells Matsuri and Soga that Hinajiki's appearance looks even more human than when they last fought and couldn't recognize him. Shirogane tells Matsuri and Soga that Suzu has just been kidnapped. Shirogane then says to them that Hinajiki has evolved into the highest form an Icon can take, a humanoid Ayakashi, and they are called Jinyo. Matsuri suits up and is jumping across rooftops with the gang to find Suzu. Shirogane recalls the time he fought against Hinajiki when he looked more like an Icon than a human. Hinajiki is seen slaughtering Ayakashi in Shirogane's flashback. Shirogane is disgusted by this and says to Hinajiki that Ayakashi shouldn't eat other Ayakashis. Hinajiki agrees with this and says that he's the closest to humans after all. Shirogane charges Hinajiki and says to the gang that he managed to wound but also managed to get hurt himself, so he had to retreat. Shirogane is amazed that he saw a Jinyo after 400 years on Earth. Shirogane points out that if Hinajiki devours the Haku of Suzu, he will be untouchable. But can he solo Goku though? Shirogane adds that they could be falling into a trap, but Matsuri says that they have to rescue Suzu and that's all that matters. We cut to Hinajiki and Suzu staying in an abandoned hotel. Suzu wakes up from her slumber and sees Hinajiki looking out of a window. Hinajiki says this broken building therein represents the broken dreams of the people in the bubble era. He adds that places like this are so much more comforting. Hinajiki gets up and reveals himself to be a Jinyo to Suzu. Hinajiki tells her how small he used to be but managed to climb his way up. He tells her how his taste of Haku got better because of how much he used to chase and hurt Ayakashis. He realized the joy he got from this and evolved into a Jinyo. Hinajiki grabs Suzu and tells her how sick he is of humans and is thinking of feasting on humans next. Hinajiki tells her that no one will be able to save her since he has Lyo protecting the abandoned hotel, which is where Ayakashi evolved from Icon. Matsuri and the others are greeted by a lot of the Lyo. Hinajiki is waiting for Lyo to bring Matsuri's head so that her Haku can be infused with fear and despair, and that's when she is ready to be eaten. Suzu runs away after hearing this. Matsuri is trying to detect Hinajiki's energy. Hinajiki is chasing after Suzu and is enjoying the chase. Matsuri punches Hinajiki just before he grabs her. Matsuri says that he's disgusted by Hinajiki's actions and is going to open a hole in his stomach. Hinajiki removes the feelings of one of Matsuri's arms and he is stunned by this. Matsuri tried to generate some wind but failed to do so. Soga pulls a Zenitsu on some Ayakashi and defeats them. Shirogane is running up the stairs and their Hinajiki and Matsuri are still in the middle of their fight. Matsuri thinks to himself that if he deals irrecoverable damage to him, he will disperse and will be unable to retain his shape. Matsuri charged at him but got his arm and leg eaten instead. Skill issue on his part. Hinajiki overpowers Matsuri and Suzu is stunned by this. Hinajiki says that Matsuri is dead and Suzu remembers back to all the fond memories she had with him and starts crying profusely. Hinajiki is about to devour Suzu, but Shirogane the goat swoops in and saves Suzu. Shirogane is finally back in his true form because Matsuri released the God-sealing scroll granting Shirogane back his original form. Shirogane is about to beat the balls out of Hinajiki. Suzu sits on top of Shirogane as if he's a horse. Shirogane tells her to hold tightly. Suzu then realizes that the seal has been undone and everything that tied her with Matsuri is all gone now. Hinajiki says to them that it's not nice stealing prey and that he's looking forward to Suzu's delicious Haku after seeing her childhood friend die right in front of him. He is a menace to the overall society. He commands Shirogane to give Suzu back to her. Shirogane thinks back to how dangerous Hinajiki's ability is, which goes by the name of Engulfing Shadow. Shirogane points out to himself that Hinajiki summons a mouth that devours Haku within its vicinity. He further adds that Ayakashi do not have any flesh and blood, so the ability of Hinajiki can directly drain the Haku away. Shirogane also considers the fact that its scent and presence are undetectable. Shirogane charges and decides to attack from a distance. Shirogane is throwing needles at Hinajiki while Hinajiki is ranting on about how Shirogane needed a large amount of Haku to counter his engulfing shadow. Shirogane unleashes a breath of fire attack at Hinajiki, but it's no use because his engulfing shadow ability sucked his fire in and no harm was done to Hinajiki. Hinajiki tells Shirogane that it's no use because he feeds off of Ayakashi arts, and Shirogane thinks to himself how direct physical attacks will affect him. But then he adds that he can't do that if he's carrying Suzu. Suzu tells Shirogane to eat him for him to survive. But Shirogane calls her a fool and tells her that Matsuri sacrificed himself to save you and is baffled that she is throwing her life away like that. Hinajiki sees them talking and takes this opportunity to launch a hidden attack on Shirogane. Shirogane notices this and then throws Suzu away to safety. And right before he sends her away to safety, he thinks back on how much he hates humans because of how close he got to them time and time again. And right after that, Hinajiki chomps off half of Shirogane's face, leaving Suzu petrified. Hinajiki calls Shirogane pathetic and tells him he will devour him completely to not disgrace him any further. Suzu launches an attack on Hinajiki with her paper cranes and tells him to back off of Shirogane. Suzu thinks back to Garaku's advice on stocking up on folded origami and how it might come in handy in emergencies. Garaku is a certified G. Hinajiki is shocked that an Ayakashi medium can pull off Ayakashi arts and notices his arm being numb from the attack. Suzu runs to Shirogane and tries to heal him, but Shirogane tells her to run and save herself. Suzu won't take no for an answer and wants to try to help him. Hinajiki destroys all of her origami and shows up behind her. He grabs her and is about to devour her, but a tornado attack separates the both of them, leaving Hinajiki shocked, thinking to himself that he already got rid of Shirogane and Matsuri, but finds out Matsuri is still alive and saves Suzu from imminent danger once again. Matsuri is him. Hinajiki screams at him that he surely killed him, but Matsuri brushes this off like a Chad and says that it's time to end this. Suzu cries with joy and hugs Matsuri tightly, saying how she thought he died, and is amazed to see that Matsuri is back to being a boy again. Shirogane explains to them that Matsuri got saved because he was a female. Shirogane further explains that the gender mark swap on Matsuri's stomach generates the Haku to transform him into a girl, and because of that, it enveloped his entire body, replacing his own Haku. So when Hinajiki's engulfing shadow devoured Matsuri's female Haku, his male Haku came back and revived him. Matsuri got revived because he carries the entire lobby. Hinajiki finally realized why Matsuri's Haku tasted so much like Shirogane. Shirogane gets devoured by Hinajiki's ability, and everyone is shocked by this, but Shirogane is still alive and got turned into his weaker version because of that attack on him. Matsuri launches an attack on Hinajiki but doesn't even scratch him. Hinajiki tells them that he's more powerful now because he consumed Shirogane's Haku. Shirogane says to Suzu and Matsuri that he's right and that they should both run away. Matsuri doesn't listen to him and tells Suzu and Shirogane that he's going to exorcise him. Suzu trusts him and grabs Shirogane and runs to safety. Hinajiki then says that he's looking forward to killing Matsuri since it will make her Haku even more delicious now. Matsuri comes up with a plan and tells Hinajiki that he's going to force his wind attacks into his engulfing shadow ability. Hinajiki rushes him and starts attacking, saying that his ability is invincible. Matsuri thinks to himself that Hinajiki's ability doesn't seem to be all that powerful since he uses hand-to-hand combat to distract his enemies and devour them with his abilities. Hinajiki slashes away at him and asks him how long he will run away for. Matsuri dodges his ability. Matsuri tells him that he figured out his weak spot, and Hinajiki is surprised but comes up with a plan to counter Matsuri's attacks. Matsuri then remembers back to the time with his gramps training him to control the wind. Matsuri calms himself and becomes one with the wind. Shirogane noticed the air all around stopped moving because of Matsuri. Hinajiki laughs at this and launches an all-out attack on him, but Matsuri calls his bluff and attacks the real engulfing shadow with a fistful of wind. Matsuri finally defeated Hinajiki as Hinajiki couldn't maintain his human form any longer and vanished away from existence. Suzu goes over to Matsuri and hugs him, making him blush. She says that she's fine now and is crying tears of joy. Soga and Panasuke spy on them and left them because they are having a moment. Shirogane then said to Matsuri and Suzu that it was not Orida, as Matsuri's gender swap awakened effect was only devoured temporarily and Matsuri would turn back into a girl around sunset. Matsuri asks Suzu to come with him to a small waterfall location. Suzu thinks to herself that it's finally going to happen, but Matsuri instead meditates under the waterfall. Now this is Ekai. Matsuri realizes his feelings for Suzu are genuine and looks at her intimately now. Suzu calls out for Matsuri and tells him that she will grow stronger as an Ayakashi medium and will one day lift the curse. Matsuri realizes that if she continues to grow with her powers, she will be out of reach, far away from him. He tells her that he will still save her on days like these. And just when things are getting good, Suzu slips and takes off Matsuri's fundoshi and reveals his manhood. After catching a glimpse of that eggplant, Matsuri transforms back into a girl, and Suzu also manages to peek at his fully nude girl body. Looks like Suzu got a 2-in-1 deal package. Matsuri and Suzu are walking back home together. Matsuri asks Suzu if her parents are worried about her, but Suzu reassures him that there is nothing to worry about since she already texted them earlier and told them that she was with him. Matsuri blushes at her and is looking at her in a new light. He thinks to himself if Suzu was always this pretty. Just before they go their separate ways, Shirogane stops Suzu and tells her that he wants to talk to her. He tells her that he's lost all his Ayakashi powers and that it has become difficult for him to fulfill his role as the king of Ayakashi. So he later reveals to Suzu that she must take his role and become the king of Ayakashi. Matsuri and Suzu were both surprised at what Shirogane said and gasped in astonishment. We cut to school and Toba is asking Matsuri and Suzu where they were yesterday. Lucy thought they had been kidnapped by a secret syndicate. Suzu apologized and Matsuri covered for her by making up a lie. Lucy brings up that they made Sujimori-sensei mad by skipping class. Sujimori pops out of nowhere and demands they see him in the staff room. Later, Matsuri and Suzu are up talking on the roof about how Toba and Lucy forgot all about Hinajiki. Matsuri then clears up to Suzu that people who don't believe in Ayakashi will have difficulty remembering people who disappear. Matsuri further adds that Ayakashi are strange and doesn't make sense, but there are plenty of nice and harmless ones roaming around. Before Matsuri could say another word, Suzu put her finger on Matsuri's lips and finished his sentence for him, saying how it would be impossible for her to be the king of Ayakashi. Suzu then asks Matsuri if that's what he wanted to say. Matsuri is a professional yapper. Matsuri says that he is worried for her, but Suzu grabs his hand and tells him that she thought about it all night and decided that she's going to do it. She pointed out to him that her Ayakashi medium powers have been growing ever since she met Shuriken, and that getting more involved with Ayakashi will help her draw out more power. She tells him that she wants to give it a shot because she wants to turn him back into a guy. Matsuri then tells her how he will help her since it is dangerous for her to do it alone. Shuriken appears behind them and then asks for Suzu to come along with him since he wants to test her to see if she is fit to be the king of Ayakashi. Afterward, Ryo is seen talking to her grandmother, who is the principal of the high school. Ryo thanked her grandmother for the transfer to the high school since she wanted to be closer to Matsuri. Her grandmother says to her that she doesn't have the ability to see Ayakashi but can offer support to her as a normal person. Her grandmother ends the conversation by wishing Ryo good luck and to prove herself useful to Matsuri and her friends. Later, Suzu and Shuriken are talking to an Ayakashi to figure out what his problem is. Shuriken reveals the Ayakashi to be Azube, the bean counter. Azube cries to them, saying that he lost his Azuki beans when he woke up. Shuriken points out to Suzu that if Azube doesn't have his beans, he will disappear. Suzu starts to worry after hearing that. She gets up and tries to focus on finding the missing beans. Matsuri calls out for Soga in his classroom and tells him they need to talk about something important. Matsuri and Soga are talking about Suzu taking up the mantle of being the king of Ayakashi. Soga finds it hard to believe that a human can take that role. Soga further adds that they don't know the extent of Suzu's powers and they need to see what happens next. Matsuri says to Soga that he is also in love with Suzu. Soga says to forget about him and that Matsuri is the perfect guy for Suzu. But Matsuri starts yapping away on what if she doesn't like him back. Soga thinks to himself how low Matsuri's self-esteem is. Soga tells him to get a hold of himself and to start working on himself to be the one for Suzu because that's the kind of man he is. We cut back to Suzu finding one of the missing Azuki beans, and Azube is so happy to find one. Shuriken noticed an improvement in Suzu's ability to detect Ayakashi. Panasuke is seen carrying a box full of Azuki beans and accidentally throws it all over Matsuri and Soga. Both of them are trying to dodge the rain of Azuki beans with their life. Suzu is able to detect more Azuki beans and later comes across more beans, and Azube is happier than ever. Suzu finds Matsuri all over Soga and she gets embarrassed by that and falls over. Matsuri, worried for her, goes and checks on her but finds that pervert maniac Ryo sniffing all over Suzu. Azube finally gets his beans and is saved. We cut to a fanservice of a lifetime of Suzu cleaning Shuriken fully nude in the bathroom. Matsuri is talking to his gramps about Suzu and Shuriken. Matsuri says that Shuriken is staying over with Suzu to teach her more about Ayakashi. Matsuri asks Gramps if she can take over as the king of Ayakashi. Gramps said to him it's up to him if he stands by her. The next day arrives and Suzu is greeted by the local Ayakashi as their new king in a shrine. Matsuri is shocked at how easily Suzu fits right in. All the Ayakashi accept in unison besides one. Tanumero objects by saying a human could never be the king of Ayakashi. Tanumero mentions the fact at how powerful Shuriken was and resolved all of the Ayakashi problems, whereas Suzu is weak. The local Ayakashi started to agree with Tanumero. Matsuri goes up to Tanumero and reassures him that everything will be fine since he will also support Suzu. Tanumero gets mad at this and transports his mind to a steamy wonderland of happiness. Matsuri is under a spell where he's taking a bath with Suzu in his head. Tanumero is thinking to himself how Matsuri rejected him and his friends earlier, and this payback for that time. Suzu tries to grab hold of Matsuri but can't because Tanumero says that only an Ayakashi can interfere to release this spell. Suzu successfully makes Tanumero realize that Matsuri is trying to be good now and wants to be friends with him. Tanumero tries to undo the spell but makes it worse because he is still training. Suzu needs to try to fix this before Tanumero disappears. Suzu makes a clone of herself and tells Matsuri to free himself from this spell. Suzu used a shadow clone ninjutsu. Suzu asked to make up with Tanumero and they all became friends after that. Shuriken is amazed that Suzu has mastered the Amakage spell. Karaku and Shuriken are expecting great things from Suzu and Matsuri. That's all for today. We hope you enjoyed our video. Give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more fantastic and steamy content.